Hi, I'm Spencer Krause. I've been building robots for over 20 years. In that time, I've seen a lot of interesting things, and I've heard a lot of interesting stories. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is a place where my colleagues and I can relax, crack a drink, and talk about some of the crazier things we've seen at work and some of the experiences we've had that have gotten us to where we are today. Subscribe today to join the collaboration. Welcome to the Collaborative Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Krause. Our guest today is Joel Reed. Joel is the president of Premier Labs and an all-around great guy. Joel, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Spencer. Great to be here.
Good to have you back.
Oh, my God. How long's it been?
I want to say like 3 years.
Yes. Yeah. No, 2020. So
Was it 2020 when we did this before?
2020 or 2021, yeah.
It was pandemic. We were isolated.
Yeah, that's right. So been about 4 years, I think.
That's wild. I didn't even realize this podcast has been around that long. It's embarrassing. I'm going senile, man.
No, it's good. Longevity. It's a sign of success.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what's new in your world? I mean, Premier Labs, obviously you were running the PRN last time I had you on. Like, what's that been like? How'd you get involved in that? And tell me a little bit about that journey.
I mean, what I'm doing is great. Really happy and very challenged and excited by what we're doing. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk about it and share it with more people. Premier Labs is a corporate venture studio. So not a lot of people know about the concept of studios. I find that to be surprising now that I get into it deeper. So every opportunity that we have to talk about it is a good one. It is, I always compare it to an accelerator or an incubator, but much earlier stage. So we're starting very much at the ideation stage. And with the name, the part of it which is called corporate, is that we're affiliated with an existing company called Premier Automation.
One of the best in town.
Well, thank you. That's
You're
very
welcome.
nice of you to say. I think they would appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, Premier Automation was a well-kept secret. I mean, they are a significant player in the systems integration space around heavy industrial systems, whether it be drive controls, power systems, automation projects, and robotics projects. And so, the concept around a studio is to have close proximity and access to a market and to customers, and to be able to understand what their existing pains are. And then, on our side, what we do is that we look to bring some of the existing technologies around robotics, AI, maybe IoT solutions, sensing solutions, and see what we can do to apply these now maturing but proven technologies to solve problems that we find in the marketplace. So a studio really starts at the very beginning. We're not working with existing companies. And part of our thesis is to really get close to customers, understand their problems, and we're driven by their issues, their needs, and what the market is looking for. So it's a little bit more of a ground-up approach than inventing a new technology and then trying to figure out where the product market fit is.
I think that's the right way to do it. Can I ask? Sorry, after you.
No, it's always the common response, right? I mean, this is not a novel thought, but a lot of our systems, in terms of venture investing, in terms of research and development and early experimentation coming out of academic environments, tends to follow a different path, right? Which is you invent something great that is extremely disruptive, and then you go through the process of figuring out where it might fit. And it's not wrong. I mean, this has been an established way of creating new companies and new markets for a long period of time. We don't see this as a better way. We see this as a complementary way, because there are conventional industries like steel, traditional manufacturing, utilities like wastewater processing and stuff like that, that have been slow to adopt a lot of these technologies. And that's just because that there's a disconnect between some of these new, innovative tools and techniques with established practices and what might be, capital. I don't want to say starved, but industries that have very difficult capital budgets. They're keeping together legacy systems, that are dated by 20 or 30 years. And so it's not a foregone conclusion of how you implement these technologies in those environments, right? So we start with them first. Obviously, we understand the technologies, and then we think about how we can bring them together. And that's the interesting thing about this. And I'm going to get to your original question, how I got involved in this. But,
Sure.
We are an organization that is building new products and solutions that could scale in the marketplaces, and then we're building new ventures around them. So it's very innovative, and it is a venture-driven type of organization. But we borrow from Premier Automation's integrated mindset in the early stages, right? When we see a problem and like, how can we take all these different pieces and put them together in a way to help the customer? But we know that we're going to transition to this point to where we need to build a scalable solution. Right, so part of what I've just done is I've explained what a studio is. It's very early stage. It's extremely hands-on. It starts with the problem first, and then you develop the right solution in response to that. And that concept has proliferated rapidly in the last 5 to 10 years. 10 years ago, you could count a couple hundred organizations that called themselves studios. Today, last count, it was 800. It's probably well over 1,000 now globally. There's an organization that tracks this and is helping those organizations grow. And then the corporate part is that we are affiliated with someone like Premier Automation, which gives us that intimate access into the marketplace. It gives us an understanding about those customers. It gives us the back-end support in terms of sales and marketing, engineering, and delivery. These are a lot of the resources that are really difficult for startups to get when they're coming out of the university.
Yeah,
right?
It makes a lot of sense to me.
So
I was gonna say I have so many questions, but if you had a
let me answer your first question first, and then I could talk about this for a long time. This wasn't my idea. And I've had a lot of ideas, and I've pushed a lot of new concepts. So this was really refreshing to me for a group of people to be on this leading edge, understand this concept. So there were a group of people that had already been talking about launching this studio together with Premier Automation. And how I came to get involved is a really great story. I think at one point I was representing this Polish company, which was a software development company called Spiresoft. And so I was just developing my network and meeting with new folks. And I was introduced to one of the previous investors that was looking to launch this studio, and was calling on him to talk to introduce Spiresoft to him, get to know his network. We finished the meeting. It was in a building in downtown Pittsburgh. And he, as we got up, he says, "Hey, do you mind if I escort you? I'm going to walk you to the elevator." And we get to the elevator. He goes, "Hey, do you mind if I ride down on the elevator with you?" He goes, I want to tell you about something else that we're thinking about working on.
An actual elevator pitch.
It's kind of a reverse pitch, because I wasn't pitching him, but it was literally an elevator pitch. And by the time we hit the ground floor and we stepped out onto the sidewalk, and I think me, and we can get into this, with my diverse set of experiences and backgrounds of the roles I've played, I just felt like I was uniquely positioned to get involved with something like this.
Sure.
Right? Having worked with startups, having worked on the funding side, having worked in the economic development realm for a period of time, I got it. I had heard a little bit about studios, and in fact, a while ago, in many communities, people would call these reverse pitches, or you would have startup weekends. It's a very similar, concept there, and I had participated in some of that. So by the time that we hit the ground floor, I knew what he was talking about, and I was hoping that he was asking me whether I'd be interested, in something like this, and he was. And so it was one of those things of like, you had me at hello. And very rapidly, I got involved with the group that was pushing this forward, and I've been very fortunate to become a part of it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So I've got some follow-on questions. So I guess the first one that comes to mind is, how does Premier Labs find ideas like product visions, customers, product basically to pursue?
Yeah. I mean, almost immediately when we started, we went directly to Premier Automation and its team and its customers for the original source of ideas.
Cool.
On day one, we put together an opportunity pipeline of 30 to 40 opportunities. And so, out there in the world of systems integrators and service providers, I mean, I think you probably might deal with this as well. You might be working with customers to solve their problems. They come to you with a discrete set of issues or requirements, and you might do a bespoke or custom solution to be able to solve that problem. You do that enough, you might work with one or two customers that have shared issues, and you might come up with a product, right?
Or you see patterns.
You see the patterns, and you think to yourself, I might be able to commercialize this. A lot of companies do that, but it's really difficult to do if you're truly a service-based organization. It's a different mindset of being successful in resource management, working within spec, working under budget, under promising and over delivering. That's a much different kind of operation and mindset than it is thinking about a scalable product. And so, what was your original question?
How do you find ideas to go into? So, I mean, you started to touch on it. Like, it sounds like you guys had effectively a whiteboard session at Premier.
So you go to these folks that already have the industry connections, and they see the patterns as well, right? So that was and remains to this day, is our primary source of opportunities. And that's why the relationship with Premier and the affiliation with them as our corporate sponsor is really important. So we tap into things that they're seeing, and that has filled out our opportunity pipeline. It's open on our website. We're open to taking new ideas as well.
Cool.
And then through developing our networks and working with industry-based stakeholders.
Now, in terms of like spinning these companies out, do you guys have a pipeline of CEOs or founders that you've installed to run these things, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so that's very interesting, right? So it's been one of the most common first questions that come up, because as you know, in venture investing, it's really important to understand who you're investing in. Team is always listed as one of the top, if not the top priority. In our model, we do flip it on its head a little bit, and we don't start with team.
Oh, cool.
We start with customer. We start with validating coming up with a well-defined problem statement, doing some early ideation, and building early proof of concepts and trying to demo that either in concept or in a working demo, to those customers. We don't look for visionary founders, what we might think of as a typical entrepreneurial founder. That's just because of the way we're approaching it.
Sure.
Right. The other reason for doing that is that if someone comes to us with a product that they have developed, and in most cases when they have invested many years and lots of dollars and a lot of their own sweat equity into it, they're going to be a lot less likely to change direction if we propose an alternative pathway for what they've developed.
That makes a lot of sense. They're just emotionally attached to a way of doing things.
Right, and especially when you think about academic environments, right? You have someone who's gone through, through a graduate program. It's become the basis of their PhD. They developed a patent portfolio, and again, this is a proven and a perfectly fine way, to get new discoveries, out into commercial markets. But we're very familiar with what happens, right? A lot of investors put a lot of stock into that entrepreneur because they want to know, are they going to be flexible?
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to identify, some of those signals in the marketplace that tells them that they need to change gears?
Well, a lot of those people get unseated by their boards for that reason.
Right, if they get that far, right? And so it's all about product market fit. 9 out of 10 venture-backed companies fail. The statistics show that about 65 to 75% of those failures are due to a lack of product market fit. So we are designed from the very beginning to be addressing this problem. Now, the trade-off is it's slower, right? So we spend more time up front evaluating those ideas and listening to the marketplace and not being wedded to a particular technical or product direction. The other thing is what you had just asked me, which is that we don't necessarily have the founder, right? Because we're so focused on the customer and the early solution. What we do place an emphasis on when we go to build the team is people with more industry experience than necessarily the technical background and experience. So we're not necessarily looking for visionary founders. We're looking for operational founders.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Founding management, right? So that, that's the way we approach it. But it does put a greater onus on us to be able to build the teams once we have actually validated a project and we're pushing it forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Did you know that Collaborative with Spencer Krause now has a merch store? Please go to cwskmerch.com for the latest in CWSK styles. We've got hoodies, t-shirts, hell, we've even got whiskey glasses. Everything in the store has custom art that our team worked really, really hard on, so go ahead and show your support for them, me, and the rest of the CWSK team by going to cwskmerch.com today. Better yet, support yourself and use discount code PODCAST10, all one word, all uppercase, for 10% off your entire order. Thanks for your support and enjoy the rest of the show. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com. So what are some of the things that you've been working on over at Premier Labs? I mean, to the extent you can talk about them. I know it's a relatively new venture and there might be a lot you can't.
No, I'm happy to talk about some of it from a general perspective. We live in an industrial and manufacturing world. And so a lot of it is being driven by operational efficiencies, process efficiencies. There are gaps where you still have a lot of manual labor performing critical tasks, within a manufacturing operation. So we look to see where automation has matured to where we can be able to solve those. It wasn't our original intent on day one, but with the rapid acceleration of artificial intelligence and a lot of the the LLM models that have been proliferating and now are available to all of us, that has opened up a lot of opportunities for us as well. So we have 3, I would say, advanced projects today out of our pipeline of 30. We probably were working on 5, 6, 7 at any one time, going out doing market interviews, doing some early concepting, to address those problem statements that we're coming up with. There were 2 that were most promising to us at the time. One of them, I would just say, was kind of in an industrial control space. How can we use an enterprise architecture to be able to take human operators today and expand their capacity. In most cases, there's a direct one-to-one linkage between a human operator and a machine, and that creates certain issues. We're about to, we actually just released a blog on this. This is not the project that I'm talking about, but one of the other projects we were talking about, and I think that this really illustrates how we think about things. One of the very early days, someone said, you know what? We think there's an opportunity for a smarter e-stop button, right? And so we're all familiar with that in this industry. The issue is that operators walk away from their machines. They become less attentive, to what's going on, or if they do take a break, it's extended, and they don't come right back. And so, there's a lot of brainstorming around, we need some proximity sensors that if they leave the area, we know that the risks, exist. And if an issue were to arise, that there might be some certain rules to where we could shut down a machine. There's also a lot of things around biometrics. What if the human just simply wasn't being attentive, or worse yet, had a health issue, around an extremely dangerous machine. And some of our customers, when things go wrong, their buildings burn down.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So this is a major issue. And so we were kind of thinking about how to create this better e-stop. But what we did is that we started going to talk to the customers where some of the original need had shown up. And then we also looked at the market. And if you look, the e-stop functionality, it's kind of a hardware, solution, a bit commoditized.
Sure,
in a
yeah.
lot of ways. I mean, there are some companies that are doing some really interesting things that we got excited about. But what it really came down to is that we talked to customers, and someone said, listen, what I really need, and he understood our original, problem thesis. He says, what I really need is how do I turn one person into five?
It's a totally different thing.
Totally different thing. Now, imagine if I had spent the last 10 years building e-stops.
Well, that's almost the opposite, because if you have a e-stop that stops the machine when the person walks away, now you've made the machine totally ineffective.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've strengthened that linkage between the operator and the machine in a way, and when that link breaks.
I can't go for a cigarette. I can't leave the machine. The machine will be idle.
So we ruminated on that for quite a bit, and we took a new direction. And we continued doing our market research on that, and that led to the product, that we're currently working on. There's another project that we are getting involved, where a lot of the industry is getting involved around robotic grinding.
Oh, cool.
We are looking at it in slightly different ways. Largely, we are a little bit more pessimistic about achieving full autonomy for grinding in high variability but low, volume environments. So, foundries, job shops.
Yeah.
And so we're working on some new technology, but also some new techniques and new processes, and a slightly, a somewhat variant on how we go to market with it. And that's been interesting to us. And so we've had lots of conversations, including yourself and others, about the state of the art, about different approaches. And we're currently in the process there of building, a working proof of concept. And the last area that's illustrative of our project opportunities, and this is something that we expect to really announce soon, early in 2026, is an AI solution that is looking to which would be an assistant to operators, to technicians, and to other employees who are working directly with complex machines.
So it's meant to be like informative.
It's meant to level up a lot of the folks working on the floor to the best operators or employees that exist today. It's meant to give them immediate access to an extremely complex set of documents, disparate information, different languages, different code bases. And it's meant to guide them through complex processes.
So these have all been white whale problems for a while. It's interesting, but the technology, to your point, has never been closer to being able to crack those.
Yeah, and the AI one wasn't a part of our original pipeline, but we know how this has just come onto the scene in force, and we have some internal folks that were expert in these customer workflows, but also was extremely enthusiastic about the potential that these AI tools provide. And they were using them themselves to install new machines, to optimize them, to service them, and all of these things. And so they were using it in their day-to-day jobs, and then they saw the potential to be able to provide that to their customers. And we jumped on it. And the thing I love about that project is it's about half of the investment of some of the other projects, but it's been twice of the development time.
And this is why people love software startups.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about that one too is it's not a general purpose tool, right? It is a specific purpose tool, and I think there's a lot of conversations about general models out there and how good will they become to solve a wide range of problems. But I think with a lot of these new technologies, there's always that promise. But then you start finding, these niche applications that can be that are ultimately optimized around the use case, and provide a much greater level of value than just using ChatGPT, to solve your problem. We're developing an ecosystem around labs. And so we have an active product advisory board. We are identifying other advisors from the industry, from a business perspective, from a technical perspective, because we want them to be engaged in our projects early on. And then it becomes sort of a dating exercise.
Nice.
Right? And so a lot of the people that we're identifying are either looking for some, intellectual stimulation. They want to get engaged in some of the new things that are happening. Maybe they're part-time investors and they're looking for, a next investment opportunity. Or maybe they're looking for their next gig, even if they're in their current gig. And so we just like to develop those relationships. We can crawl, walk, run, with that.
Awesome.
And so if I do have a call out, from this conversation is that we're always looking for new folks that have experience, in these industrial settings and an interest in these types of technologies, or experience in bringing these technologies into those environments, because we're always looking to expand our network of folks. Someone can be, an advisor at different levels early on in these projects, and that serves both parties, right? They get to know the opportunity, they get to see it evolve, they know firsthand its prospects, and then we get the opportunity to know that individual and what value they can bring to it. And so we hope through that, and we already have some examples of that working out well, where they just get more and more involved. And
so,
yeah.
If somebody's interested in, at this point it sounds like, multiplying operator effectiveness over multiple machines, AI to help people better understand, how to get the most out of their machine, or, robotic grinding applications, and just kind of partnering with Premier Labs on one of these, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, they can just find me on LinkedIn for one, but we do have a website, premierlabs.io. Or if they know you, they should say, hey, Spencer, I want to meet Joel.
Happy to shoot you a text when that happens.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, there's no magic, solution there. I'm always accessible, and we love making new connections. Whether it be an advisor, a potential hire to a technical team, a customer who's really interested in some of these topics that we're talking about and might want to be an early customer, in a pilot arrangement. And we're also building our network of investors. We will be raising funds for Premier Labs next year. And then each of these companies are going to go out as independent companies.
Nice.
And, we'll go through the rounds of funding, that's necessary, to ensure their success. And so I also look at this, I always think in terms of these, these metaphors. I mean, we're creating this family of children that need a lot of hand-holding early on.
Amen to that.
Right? And, we're involved deeply, in their development. But as they start standing on their own and developing their own personality, then we let them go, and then other people come into their lives, to be able to help them, grow and develop. It takes a village, and then ultimately they become independent adults. And I think it's important to say, and not a lot of people understand this, that we put time, effort, and investment capital into these companies. They'll spin off as their own companies. Premier Labs sits on the cap table, but we're ultimately looking for others with a stake to help operate those companies, and then ultimately in their independence, they're going to be looking for additional investors to be able to continue that development.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds really holistic. I also love the thing you said about recruiting just operator founders. So I mean, I think that's very wise. I think it's something that we kind of look for as well when we're like in recruiting Wes, for instance. Like what I really, really liked about him is that he just had like get it done, I'll do whatever it takes sort of mentality. And I don't know what kind of brought you to that conclusion that was sort of a better fit than a visionary founder. And not to say Wes isn't a visionary, I just
Yeah, I think some of that was already baked into the concept with our relationship with Premier Automation, right? I have already experienced, to be in a room full of engineers, Premier Automation engineers. They're different than a lot of the engineering teams that would be in an early stage startup that's creating cutting or leading edge technology, but they have this pragmatic, hands-on experience, right? And so they, if you're if you're trying to make some strategic decisions, or you're stuck somewhere in the development process, I can't think of an immediate example, but they already instinctively know what the right and wrong answer is,
Right.
based upon 20 years of being in these. And and it's not wrong. Again, I think that we're just an alternative. But when you have other people that come from different origins, they may not have been in a steel plant.
Yeah, for sure.
But they're selling into steel. And every entrepreneur is extremely resourceful. They're going to get into those steel plants, but they're going into them for the first time. They haven't been in hundreds of them or thousands of them. They haven't woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning to take a call to say that a main line is down.
Right.
Right? And so that was already baked into it. I think part of it, too, comes from my own experience in introducing first mobile robot platforms as product solutions, and then with IAM Robotics, mobile manipulator solution. When I just looked at over my experience, those companies that ended up becoming the category leaders, more often than not, they came from people that were intimately aware and knowledgeable about the problem. They tended to already have come from the industry. They were operators. They had already experienced the problems, and then they went and searched for a solution.
Yeah, that makes
right?
a lot of sense.
Locust Robotics is a great example of that, right? Which, really was developed, from, a logistics provider, that had lost access to Kiva robots at the time when Amazon had purchased Kiva, and they saw the promise around these technologies. But they had really strong understanding and really effective solutions for solving workflows and solving operational problems and understanding what was going to impact the bottom line. And then they developed a solution that was less about the technology, and it was really more about the business value.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just came to appreciate that, over time, and I saw that as a model. So marrying that with Premier's experience, it was clear that was the right way to go.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've even started taking that approach more and more at SKA Robotics as the company grows. I mean, I mentioned to you over dinner, like SKA's revenue in 2025 was up 57% from 2024. And I think part of the reason for that is, one of the questions I ask when I'm talking to a new customer now is, how much is not having the robot costing your business?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the most important things to ask right out of the gate. You don't beat around the bush. You're just like, what's the actual business value to you here? Otherwise, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Or let's do something else. Like, let's find, something that actually makes business sense. And operators love that, right? I mean, if you're talking to like a COO or a VP of ops, like that's, there's nothing greater that you can say to them than like, how can we make your business more value?
Yeah. And the best technology usually or doesn't always win. I don't know what the statistics are if it, if it half the time it wins, but normally it doesn't win, right? And the further problem is that a really sexy technology will get you a lot of attention in the marketplace. It could raise a lot of money. It could get customers inviting you into their operation, which sometimes can hurt an early stage business because there's a great deal of interest, but at the end of the day they don't buy, right? Because you're not actually solving one of their top 3 priorities, for that business on that day. And I also learned that firsthand. You have to understand, what's the CEO's agenda, who's your actual buyer, and what does that person go home worrying about every night? If you're not addressing one of those items, you're not going to be successful. And I just think operators and owners that come from that space, they know what they worried about day in and day out. And if they're astute enough and understand the technology then that's a better recipe for success in a marketplace, I think, than starting with the technology. Now, if you start with the technology, that doesn't mean, there's a lot of companies that start off that way, but I think they have to make a huge investment, burrow, right,
The Philadelphia-based agricultural robotics company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a story of when they.
Hey, Charlie.
Charlie, thank you very much. Hey, Charlie, how you doing? And Charlie, I'm going to give you a lot of props here. I mean, he relocated himself to that market. He went and embedded himself in that market. And I've heard that story from other, entrepreneurs as well. And so I think it's okay to fly in once and have a meeting. But, the lesson that I've learned, sometimes the hard way, is that you really have to go live with your customer.
Right.
And become your customer, because then you truly understand their pain, and then you have a better sense of how to solve that.
I don't think people even really take you seriously as a business partner until you've seen them at least 6 or 7 times in person. I don't know. That's been my experience. At least, like to actually close a deal, like you gotta just get a lot of touches in with a customer and really understand, to your point, their problems and their life and empathize with them.
Do you know our culture?
Our culture?
Yeah, from CMU Roboticists. If you're out there, hello. I haven't seen you in a while, but another great story. They created a company a while back that had a sensing platform that they targeted at fast food restaurants.
Oh,
and
interesting.
So using existing video cameras, they could, and this was in the very early days, we're talking 2003, 2004.
I think I've heard about this, but I didn't know the person's name. Okay,
Yeah.
This is interesting.
They would be able to look at the type of car, the number of occupants in the car, do some analysis of who was in there. And they had a prediction algorithm for what their order would be.
Oh, wow.
Or at least start preparing food.
I haven't heard about this. This is interesting.
Well,
okay.
the story here is that here he is, PhD, early in the industry, leading roboticist. He went and applied for a job at McDonald's.
Oh, I have heard about this. Okay.
Right, and worked there for somewhere at a period about 1 year, 18 months, or a material amount of time as a line cook.
Nice.
Right? He completely embedded himself into that customer situation so he could firsthand understand what the problems were, so he would come up with the better solution. So I just love stories, either whether it comes from a customer who moves into an innovative space, or people who really embed themselves, and that's hard to do. But that's making a complete commitment. The advantage that we have at Premier, we're already embedded, right? And so our relationship with Premier Automation as our corporate sponsor, gives us that from the start, and we leverage that every day.
One thing I do want to ask you about, though, and I kind of talked to I'm cheating here because we kind of briefed on this before, but I mean, you were the CEO of IAM Robotics, obviously, and kind of brought that company up, and a lot of folks remember you really, really fondly in that role, including Yash Munian and Nick Kirsch and Chris Grill and Tom and Vlad and all those guys.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
You guys had like just a second to none culture and some of the best engineers in town. Like it's amazing what you built over there.
Tom and Vlad, it all stemmed from them as founders. Phenomenal people, great engineers, and I was lucky to be a part of that.
For sure. And Vlad and I get together very frequently. I like that guy a lot. Nothing but good things to say about him. Tom's awesome too. I just don't know him as well as Vlad. What I did want to ask is
I know where this is going.
About the famous machetes and flamethrowers story. So I've heard Yash's version of this. I've heard Chris's version of this, I think. I always get confused as to who's brought this up on the podcast, but I have an ulterior motive here, which is at some point I want to cut together a montage of like a bunch of different people telling their sides of the story. And I would love to get yours being the CEO at the time.
I'm amused that you're amused by this.
It's so amusing.
Well, I hope others find it amusing, but I'll humor you and tell you the story at least from my perspective. I think the hook has been set by saying the machete story, right? Yeah, for sure.
And flamethrowers, I'm told.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could speak on the flamethrowers. I'm not sure I have the firsthand memory around that one, but I'll talk about the machete at the very least.
Okay.
But I think they both kind of fit into, working at a startup and the progression of a startup, right? I think it's why a lot of people are attracted to the very early stage, of a company. There's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of creativity. I guess I'll just say there's not always a lot of rules. They are flat organizations, and you hire people that are attracted to the mission. They understand that once everybody's rowing in the right direction, everybody just gets to work. And then, as we know about the whole startup culture, you work really, really hard, but you can play hard, too. Sometimes you got to blow off steam. And there's a certain stage within a startup where that's pervasive. That's the pervasive culture. I'm drawn to that as well, right? I think that's important to say. I really, really am. I've always said that I have an appetite for a certain amount of chaos. But what I have staked my career on is that I will take that amount of chaos and I want to turn it into some kind of order, right?
Sure.
And so every startup has to go through a maturation, process. I myself came into IAM. I had known Tom through a couple other interactions and got to know him a lot better. And they were 12 engineers and one junior sales guy when I first met them. And so he really wanted to start developing a more formalized sales and marketing function. And that had been traditionally my background. So I came in to build, all of that out. And I jumped right into the whole startup culture as well, right? So, work our butts off, but, be able to blow off that steam, have a lot of fun. It was a great group. Everybody there now, lifelong friends, from that early stage. But in creating some order, right? There was a point where we were raising money, and investors were very interested in what we were doing. First of a kind product, amazing engineering team, but then they want to start seeing some of the maturing parts, right? They want to know about the business strategy and the business functions, and they were also looking for a CEO. And I really, I owe a lot to Tom, because he came to me and he saw something where I would be able to help. And it was my first opportunity to have an executive leading role in a company like that. And so Tom and Vlad came to me and asked me to be CEO of the company, to represent them in a lot of these investor conversations, to help think strategically about where we were taking the business, to focus it. Going back to our earlier conversation, we had several different use cases across different market areas that really led to kind of different business plans. And so we were still doing some discovery in a way at that time. And so we had to go through some exercises to figure out what business so that we wanted to be in. So all of that was kind of happening at the same time. I'm giving you that as the backdrop because, there's these crazy times in a startup, but then, then you start maturing. And, you have to start having more responsibility, right? Because the risks get greater. As you take on more money, you answer to, more stakeholders and investors. We were going out for a major fundraising round at the time, so you have to start growing up a little bit. And I do have that ability to be childish at times, but also I really do seek for us to get to that mature part.
They're both important in their own way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So now fast forward to the Machete story, and I was CEO, and I was, and so where IAM was located, it sat between a set of train tracks on a very slim piece of land, and then we were sitting right along the bank of Western Pennsylvania's Ohio River, right? And in that area were a lot of trees and a lot of bush. And, people during the summer, we went out there and would eat our lunches, or just to have views of the river. It was a nice thing to have. So it would become overgrown. My office was looking in that direction, and I had a window that looked out to that way. Well, one day I was sitting in my office, and I look out the window, and I see, well, I guess it was Chris Grill. And now, Chris, if I'm wrong about that, I apologize, and I'm happy to be corrected.
I'm now picturing Chris Grill in this story, by the way.
Now, I thought it was some others. I don't remember Yash. I didn't know if Yash was there by that time, but perhaps he was. I think maybe he might have heard about the story later.
Could be.
And enjoyed it. But I'll let the others substantiate that part of it. I saw 3 individuals, and I saw
one of them was Chris.
and I saw one of them with a machete just whacking away at the bush, whacking. And the others are just sitting there grinning ear to ear, having fun. And then they hand it to the other guy, and he takes some whacks and everything else. From my perspective, I felt like that they were so free in doing this and just standing around in kind of a haphazard way. I saw impending disaster. I saw somebody losing a limb, right? And by the way, I have many other stories that predated this moment where we were trying to grow and mature and everything else. And I saw similar things, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm like, I don't know why they're doing that, but you know what? It's not my place to say anything. This was my place to say something. I had a responsibility. And my insurer at the time would have cared that I had some responsibility. So my fatherly instincts kicked in, and I went out, walked across the parking lot, and it's really strange because if you know me, I mean, I could be fairly direct, and there certainly is a part of me that have been like, hey, guys, what the fuck are you doing? Don't do that. Give that to me. Never do that again, right? But I just had this calm, and I walked up to him. I'm like, oh, hey, let me see the machete. And I'm thinking that they're thinking that, he's like, oh, Joel wants to take a couple whacks. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they handed the machete, and I just turned around and walked away. And the funny thing is that they understood perfectly what I meant by that action, right? Like, oh, yeah, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing this. I love that you love that story. I mean, that was just when you came to me and said you had heard the story, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, cool. So I feel like we're in a good spot to kind of start to wind down. As we near the end, is there anything you want to plug? I mean, there's obvious ones. I think I know what you're going to say, but then there might be non-obvious ones. What you got?
I mean, we're always looking to make new connections and expand our network. If you're not aware of a venture studio, take a look at it. There's already enough data that's coming out and evidence to show how they're being more successful in creating viable companies, getting to venture rounds faster, and showing better returns, for investors. So, number one, I would just encourage you to learn about the concept of a venture studio. And, if anybody wants to have a conversation about this, whether they're thinking to start their own or they're interested in what we're doing, I'm always open to having a conversation. So I think that's number one. I did mention, flipping the process on its end, the thing that we have to work on is building teams around our companies. And we have 2 right now. There's a third, actually, that I didn't mention. We are looking to acquire a company that has an existing product and established customer base. So that would be another one that we would be looking for operational people, someone to lead it, building out a sales force. Probably don't need a lot of engineering support for that one. But for the others, we're going to always be looking for folks to help expand, our development teams, product managers, and leaders from the industries that we are targeting that might have an interest in an entrepreneurial effort, right? We don't need someone necessarily who had, founded a company before, because we continue to provide a lot of hands-on support, for those folks.
Awesome.
But we really do want someone who has the credibility with the market that we're approaching and understands the customers and is really going to build a solution and a company, that delivers value in the areas that's needed. And that's our overall, thesis, for our companies, is to be driven by the marketplace. So I would say if there's anything I'm asking for is just to continue meeting, great people who might be interested in this. And if we could be helpful in any other way, we want to be as well.
Awesome. So If you're interested in joining a company helping turn it around from a sales and ops perspective, contact Joel Reed on LinkedIn. If you're interested in learning more about venture studios, perhaps joining Premier Labs or starting your own, contact Joel Reed on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Or come to premierlabs.io.
Or come to premierlabs.io.
Yeah.
And if you're an investor that's looking to invest in a group of people that have been hitting heavy and bringing things over the line for years, and doing something safe with people that know what they're doing, find Joel Reed on LinkedIn or go to premierlabs.io. Joel, thank you so much for coming
Spencer.
on, man.
You're the man. I appreciate it.
You as well.
This is a lot of fun, and thank you for the whiskey. So good.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Glad
This
to
is
have
a
you
lot
in
of
the
fun.
studio. We'll do it
All
again
right.
soon.
Well, let's not wait so long.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us today. If you've made it this far, chances are you'll like other episodes too. Collaborative with Spencer Krause can be found on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Subscribe today to get notified when the latest episodes release and support the channel. Have an idea for a guest I should interview? Hop in the comments and let me know who that is. I'm always looking for new people to talk to, and chances are you know folks that I don't yet. Thanks for coming in, and I'll see you on the next one. Collaborative with Spencer Krause is sponsored by SKA Robotics. If you're in the market for elite field robotics expertise, please consider hiring SKA Robotics. They sponsor this podcast and solve some of the toughest engineering problems in the world. SKA Robotics can be found at skarobotics.com.